It was a year of very little beard, and that's due to Don't Starve Together giving me very little to work with, which is weird. Now don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that the content we did get wasn't cheered, nor can any of us say that Klei ignored their very own roadmap here. However, the signs are clear. With the foundations they laid in 2023, we're in for another character-heavy 2024, everyone. But I digress. While we will talk how our survivors changed dramatically soon enough, I would love to focus our attentions on Klei's follow-up to, and I quote, 2022's Setting the Stage. This year began as they typically do with a small yet significant event, and this one was a snooze fest. Literally, Year of the Bunnyman brought with it some stupid fun with the side of sneaky mechanics that should not go ignored, even if I myself completely forgot about it and its amazing foods before today. Can you truly blame me though, as no surprise, Taken Root, the very first content update of 2023, and all of its fresh additions seemingly took root in all of 2023. Wagstaff became front and center, lunar rifts opened up the time-space continuum, lethal lunar leaves led to limitless headaches, and our first ever encounters with the new mechanics of planar unfolded, with mixed reactions of course, but Dawson the new Brightshade gear, a return to some Wilson refresh content, and even the mind-bending end of this very animation before your eyeballs now, and I myself look back on it fondly and have not forgotten its impact moving forward. And in all honesty folks, as many negatives we can all lay upon this update, that is the biggest compliment it can get, because it laid the foundations of everything to come. But there's a slight issue in that sentiment, everyone, and it stings me in particular because it only applies to the lunar side of this entire year. They introduced all this stuff, but it's just stuff for the time being. Yes, it's new mechanics, laid the groundwork, but none of it feels like it's an upgrade to anything. And all of it has still not culminated in what Klei keeps telling us to wait for. Catch my drift? Because as much as I've been loving the lunar content for all of these years, it would be the shadow half of the ongoing war for the constant that would blow everything out of the water in my opinion. Those annoying riff interactions were suddenly meaningful, challenging, but fun. The natural progression of the newly introduced mechanics in both these updates felt way more natural, as Acid Rain and the Ink Blights battered our brains. And with the Queen of the Constant now fully integrated into the game for the first time ever, there was very little not to appreciate in Terrors Below, everyone. Hell, the weakest part of the shindig was its void gear, and even that's a stretch considering how unique it was still. Tack on yet another absolutely amazing trailer that starts and ends with some of the biggest pieces of lore that we could ever ask for, and it could very well be my favorite update from 2023, skill tree releases included mind. And here I was ready to launch into this whole thing, and I probably still will, about how much Terrors Below gave us in comparison to Taken Root, especially with these three guys. But it all comes down to one thing, I think. Miasma. Miasma is this dark cloud that just surrounds the rifts in the caves. We've all seen it, and we have to choose how we want to counter it. Do we literally just want to counter it and ignore it, or do we want to burn it away? And it's so simple, but it adds such an amazing level to everything, including when we're fighting the new Shadelings within it or outside of it. And speaking of those Shadelings, they too have some dynamics to them. They're actually not hostile unless we get close to the rift, so we can use that to our advantage and pick them off one by one, over and over and over again, instead of just having to run around the grazers and just avoid getting bit in the ass. That's not fun. That is. The Ink Blights are an awesome encounter. You guys know how much I love the shadow pieces, so discount shadow pieces, I'm in. Resting Horrors are now an amazing find, especially after a more recent update that we'll talk about later, but they were introduced in this guy, in case you forgot. And of course, to end things, the Void Gear itself, which in and of itself is limited compared to the Brightshade stuff, but it does the thing that Miasma does. It adds a layer of dynamics to everything. You want to use the Reaper, and you have certain shadow affinities, it can actually talk to you, which is awesome. You want to use it to reap stuff, a million things at a time? Sweet. You want to use it as a weapon that has a charge ability that's better against lunar things? Go for it. 3 things in one. Already better than just straight up damage, damage, damage. And then you got the Umbrella, which is a personal umbrella with insane stats, but you can lay it on the ground and has an area of effect thing. That's sweet. That's awesome. Way better than just damage, damage, damage. So surprisingly enough, especially with the discourse that I've seen this year, there's a lot of praise to go around for 2023's first 2 content updates. Even with the Void Gear, it's not as good as the Brightshade stuff, but it's still there. Ironically enough, though, when one of my favorite games in recent memory would come portaling in with crowns and swords at the ready for the Cult of the Lamb crossover event, all I and many others had to do was drop our praise and find ourselves wielding torches and pitchforks instead. For good reason too, as it was the second crossover event to see Clay get absolutely destroyed content-wise. The content itself was and is still locked behind this summer oasis fishing, and everything in it was window dressing for the most part. I think I was reasonably upset back then when this first released, but now I'm just utterly disappointed, folks. What do we even say about this crossover, everyone? Like, this is where we can dunk on Clay and probably face no repercussions. This is utterly embarrassing. I am not gonna lie. Yes, they warned us it was gonna be a bite-sized crossover, but when you compare it to the Cult of the Lamb side, which I did, and then you look back at the Terraria crossover and how much the developers there utterly blew Clay out of the water like it wasn't even close. This is just sad. We got 3 things, all of which are tied to the summer season alone, 2 of which are frickin' turfs. What do the other gamers from the Cult of the Lamb side think about this game when we don't treat it right? Like, Clay, you failed them. For real. And I'm sorry, I could sit here all day and rag on Clay for this one, but all I'm gonna say is, how on earth was this not a prelude or even the very follower update that you've kind of been teasing and we've been kind of begging for this entire time? I have this video right here where it says you were thinking about it. So why didn't you do it in this? And because of that, all I can really do is credit the other developers who were such great, honorable hosts of not only our side, but the constant and the content they were given to mold to their liking. And they showed such respect to that where it was needed, which, now that I mention it, how much respect is the community giving a host of horrors nowadays? It was the game's final content update of the year, therefore it should be leaving quite the impact on us all, and yet I've heard very few people actually taking advantage of what you see in that thumbnail right there. What was a more engaged Wagstaff, the 3 quote-unquote new mutated bosses, the end game level crafts, and a whole new crafting system not enough for us? No, it wasn't, but not for the reasons you think. So let's just do like Wagstaff and zip back to reality for some last minute note taking, everyone. Because you were 4 years too late, Clay. That's why. Time, everyone. It's a fickle little thing, and it's a weird thing to end on for a video about content updates in a video game. But bear with me, because when we get to the content you see before you, we wonder, why are we doing this? And then when we get close to this, we wonder, why are we doing this? The amount of comments that I saw and continue to see that say, wow, that's so cool, but I'm never gonna see that stuff, is astronomical. This year, more than ever, Clay. And I think you need to heed what you just heard right there. As yes, I myself can sit here and praise this update, as I really feel like we finally got some post-endgame stuff that is meaningful and will have great impact moving forward with the Ice Crystallizer, the Howlitzer, and the Berger Bin. Now, I will say they're still kind of insanely expensive for what they do, and we should have got them a long time ago, and maybe shouldn't be locked behind post-endgame stuff that the majority of players are never going to see, but they are more than the Bright Shade and the Void stuff. I'll give them that. The Sawhorse is fun, but once again, it's locked behind Resting Horrors and Pearl, which is very strange. The 3 new bosses, very fun, but kind of a little too easy once you actually know how to handle them. And then Wagstaff showing up more integrated into the game is nice, but it just doesn't make sense with the whole Wagstaff set pieces with the new, like, construction gear everywhere. But when it leaves the Warbus armor, I can kind of let it slide. But again, that's me. Probably not a significant number of you. So I get it. I understand the fatigue that has started to set in with a lot of players, including tenured streamers and content creators within this community in 2023. And that's just the content side. We haven't even gotten to the whole discussion of, we had 4 years of character refreshes. Now we're probably going to have another 2 years of character updates. That's part 2. So in the end, what does it all come down to? I like the way things look, sound, and feel, but every time that first week of hype dies down, I'm just like, what's the point? And that goes for almost every single one of these updates, minus Terrors Below, which is weird, because I know it's the exact opposite of taking root, so I should feel the same way about it, but I don't, because that just makes sense. I think they introduced the lunar stuff, which I absolutely adore, be it the Lunar Island, the Ancient Archives, that whole quest line, and then they didn't know the next step. And I get it, maybe the shadow side with Charlie is easier to weave into the game and the lore, but like, man, it just sucks to see such greatness and the potential just not be reached. But please hear me out, folks. Do not be like the really annoying growing population of people who do not use this guy before they start doing this when it comes to this game and this community and Klei itself. Those people, vocal minority. For real. And unfortunately, they're becoming a majority, and that's bad for this game. I felt it more than ever this year that this community has gone downhill. Badly, and they do not know how to talk about this game because they think they have to praise it all damn long because Klei can do no wrong. That is not true. Do not just hear my negatives and ignore all my positives, because that has happened over the last 3 videos and I have no idea how any of you got out of school. But I digress. We still have the Nightmare Werepig. I like that boss. We still have the Scrapbook, a wonderful addition for all the new players, but holy moly, is it overwhelming. We also have the Lunar and Shadow Affinities and the synergies that came with them, and I love the whole dynamic of Lunar versus Shadow. I just don't like how Klei has done it. We'll talk about that in part 2 with the characters. We also have all the hunting changes of this year, which is a very sneaky little update among this whole thing. You can watch that here. And of course, it was the 10-year anniversary of Don't Starve itself, so how can we not celebrate that? I liked 2023, but guess what? I didn't like all of 2023, so I made that known. But oh, trust me, you want to see that guy you've been calling me, the oh my gosh, he just sits in a chair and complains all day nowadays, be here for part 2. I'd love to have you. But folks, there you go. That was the year in review of 2023 for Don't Starve Together with Taken Root, Terrors Below, the Cult of the Lamb crossover, a host of horrors, and then of course the honorable mentions at the end. Not a bad year. Honestly, the content updates held up this year, which is kind of saying something, but I really do hope that Klei just takes some time in 2024 to just slow down and realize what made the game great in those previous Lunar and Shadow years with Return of them, and hopefully returns to that form. But we'll probably talk about that at the end of a potential part 3, because there's another honorable mention that we might have to get to, everyone. But thanks for watching. Well wishes to all. Thank you so much for being around for 2023. It's unbelievable that I have also been making content for this game for 10 plus years now. Whew. And I only have you to thank for that. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.